Daneil W. Drezner makes us understand what is connection that exists between popular culture and the functioning of the international world politics, where Hollywood films, most likely science fiction, depicts and portrays the conflicts of foreign policies between countries and the ways in which they see and understand the world. International relations have existed ever since Sumerian city-states 3500 BC. However, international relations came to play a very important role ever since the end of World War II. We live in a new century where political ideologies are no longer part of this age, but instead we came to understand and categorize each other as identities. Since the ending of World War II, leaders of the Western civilization have realized the need to foster relationships with other nations of this world, where the living dead have been a constant threat to foreign policies. It all started in the 1950s with the communist nations, and finally, terrorism emerged in the 1990s. The free world has fought the various threats of these flesh-eating zombies, which has created a world full of fear and insecurity. It is time for a change. With the world reaching a new age of transition, the need for energy and technology is at its highest peak, and the need to have international security is the main priority. The living dead are here to stay, and this is the time to prepare for the biggest Armageddon of all time. Zombies have been an obvious metaphor for medical maladies, mob rule, and Marxist dialectics. We can start seeing some of the fears of citizens by witnessing one of the primary terrorist attacks, which caused for the renewed interest in the living dead. Then, how are we yet to able to stop this unexpected Holocaust threat to our nations? Collective nations like the Borg are fighting against the individualists, and there is a constant battle, one that is becoming one of the greatest war of all times. But who is going to win this endless alienated war? Collectivists are seen as zombie threats to the Western world, whose ideology is based on liberalism. But the collective nations, or so-called zombies, are fighting against the movement of globalization that liberalists want to implant in the world as a one-world order. What is about to happen is a question to be answered by the predictions of the time to come. As tension is built in a world of constant warfare between cultural identities and political ideologies, nations are securing their borders by developing new emerging technology to prepare for the biggest cyborg holocaust attacks of all time. In a world of sophisticated zombies, alliances between human states and zombie states are possible. American realists have developed smart strategies by creating temporary alliances convenient between zombie states and emerging ghoul governments to later foment a conflict between anti-zombie states and the ghouls themselves to profit the relative losses of both sides. Zombie states are seen as rogue in their intention of disrupting the stability and peace of the world. Their main aim is to bring chaos to Western civilization for their own personal interest through the use of terrorism. However, they know that going full force against the hegemony of the world will only bring about their demise. Thus, the only approach to confront the US is through psychological warfare. Coming to the era since the end of World War II, this was the start of the clash of doctrines between the human and the living dead. On one side, you have the free world where capitalism was the ideology, and on the other side was dominated by communism. Their aims were simple. Capitalism focused on free market and democracy, where the strongest survive, and communism, on the other hand, concentrated on equality and a centralized government that favored collectivism. For the human race to survive the test of time, globalization has to be the only solution they adapt and take on to. It is only logical and possible to achieve this goal through globalization. Drezner mentions that to attain this ultimate objective, human race should adhere to the doctrine of capitalism. This can be seen in the development and modernization of many Western and Asian states who implemented this doctrine in their political system to achieve a more stable and global economy. Where else communism failed the nations of the living dead in the late 1980s, where the Soviet Union could not sustain the debt levels and administration of a huge territorial land. The next major threat to the living humans in the 1990s was terrorism. The birth of terrorism came about due to the radical ideology of the individuals unhappy with Western progression. Terrorists cannot be identified with any nation or government organization. Drezner states that the international political theory response to zombie menace is only skin deep when the problem is much worse than expected. Well, Drezner clearly failed to realize that the entire terrorists that haunt and plague the world today were in fact manufactured and trained by the Western governments. This fact is clear to see for everyone as to how the most notorious groups of all time, Al-Qaeda, was a product of the CIA due to reasons of protecting then Afghanistan from the invasion of the Soviet Union. Their leader Osama bin Laden was an espionage and freedom fighter for the Afghanistan tribal government in the late 1980s. However, he then turned rogue and started to champion the cause of religion and bring about the demise of the Western civilization. How can Drezner make such a claim about government taking the threats of terrorists lightly when they were the ones, in fact, that made them who they are right now? I can relate to the claim by Drezner that different national governments would react differently to the threats and chaos caused by these zombies. Only the strong, fittest and most technology advanced nations would be able to withstand the attack of the living dead. The best way to approach this matter is through the complete eradication of the zombie plague. Although Drezner would disagree with this solution, getting to the nest of the living dead and annihilating them with advanced military technology and artillery will then assure that their threat will be of no use in the future. Military might and power will subdue these radicals to submission, to eventually giving up their holy cause. The usage of sophisticated drones, stealth planes, and carpet bombing has tremendously weakened the terrorist organization and even led to the death of their infamous leader Osama bin Laden in 2011. Neoconservative approach, in addition to having a stable government where there is no bureaucratic dysfunction and good public opinion on this matter, would surely make this world a much safer place. The US hegemony would lead the way as being the police of the world, and then the quest towards globalization can perhaps be followed through. At the end, we are all still standing as where we were a century ago. Political actors are still facing the same problems and concerns of international security. Today's humans are far more advanced in technological aspects than ever before in the history of mankind. And yet, humans are still facing the same identity struggles between nations that have different culture, races, political ideologies, religions, philosophy, and so on. It is necessary for each nation to keep investing in military technology and compete between each other to preserve and maintain security within nations and dominate weaker nations through hierarchy